We're going to get started. All righty, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. I would like to call the regular meeting of Los Altos School District Board of Trustees to order. A recording and/or broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, and the recording and/or broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. I will now call the roll. Vladimir Ivanovic.
Here.
Jessica Spicer.
Here.
Brian Johnson.
Here.
Steve Taglio.
Here.
And I, Vaishali Sirke, am also here. So thank you. All right, moving on to agenda approval. Would any board members like to provide comment on the agenda? Okay, then may I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. May I please have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Jessica. Okay. Motion to approve the agenda was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. We'll do a roll call vote. Vladimir?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Closed session report. No action was taken in closed session tonight. Ooh, staff celebration. Excited about this one. Jeff?
Yes, thank you. Just a opportunity to recognize our district lead nurse, Monica Sidher. Monica, thanks for joining us tonight. Monica was recently recognized in our region by the California School Nurses Organization, receiving the Excellence in School Nurse Administration Award. So I can say with confidence it could not have gone to a more deserving person. Monica has done a great job, did a great job prior to this world of the pandemic, and she has done just an absolutely fantastic job in being a part of the leadership team, really making sure that we are implementing everything we can to ensure the safety of our students and staff during the pandemic. And so I just wanted to take this moment to congratulate Monica and have her recognized by the board as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations, Monica. I'm so happy that our kids and our staff are in such good hands.
Do you have a speech ready?
This is a wonderful district to be a part of. What a great team here. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Of course.
Awesome. Okay, we'll move on to our superintendent's update. Mr. Baer?
Yeah, I just had one item that I wanted to share with you this evening, and that's just making sure the board is aware, and one last opportunity for the public as well. We are in the midst of receiving notifications from our families who want to switch from virtual school into in-person or vice versa, and that window closes this evening. So we'll be back with more information on that at the next meeting, just updating some numbers for you. It looks like there's probably going to be around 100 students, Sandra, I would say, about 100 students that are going to want to shift from virtual to in-person. I think that'll be the net. Currently, there's about 650 students in our virtual school, so that'll move it to about 550 or so. But we'll bring more detailed numbers on the anticipated numbers at our next meeting.
Great, thank you, Jeff. All right, let's move on to the consent calendar. Would any board members like to provide comment on consent items E1 through E7? Okay, seeing none, may I please have a motion to approve consent items E1 through E7?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. May I please have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Jessica. Motion to approve consent items E1 through E7 was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. We'll now do a roll call vote. Jessica?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Aye.
Ryan,
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. On to employee requests to address the board. From the Los Altos Teachers Association, we have Natalie Cannon tonight.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Nice to see everyone. My name is Natalie Cannon. I am speaking as the Secretary of Los Altos Teachers Association. I'm also a sixth grade teacher at Santa Rita. First of all, we have to shout out our 7th and 8th grade teams because they are working so hard to wrap up their first semester. And then the very exciting news, they are reopened for 7th grade. So big congrats to them, and shout out for all the hard work that they've been doing to prepare for this. And I know the scheduling and kind of getting back in the swing of things in person. So we're excited for them to get that in-person journey going. And going along with the in-person teaching expanding to junior high, we do have teachers starting to get their vaccinations. We've had quite a few get their first round. I got mine last Thursday, so I'm excited that many people are able to get through. I know we still have some that are working on it, but I hope we can get everyone vaccinated ASAP. And then finally, our elementary school teachers are working hard as the second trimester has come to a close somehow. Time is flying. So we're preparing those report cards for our trimester 2 communication with the families and looking forward to this final trimester. So thanks everyone for the support. And I'm happy that LATA and LASD keeps working together really successfully in these times. And yeah, happy trimester 3 and happy starting to Egan and Block.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie. Great. Speaking for the California School Employees Association, Elena Shea.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Elena Shea. I'm the secretary at Covington and speaking as the vice president of CSCA. As you probably saw on your agenda, that the contract for CSCA is coming up. And so CSCA voted and ratified it, and we have confidence in the negotiations. So we urge the board to vote for it too. Thank you so much. And I'd like to also second the previous comments of getting ready for junior high and COVID vaccine and all the work that's gone into both of those things. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elena. All right, I'd like to move on to community comments. This time is reserved for citizens and employees to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items, except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may make a brief comment or ask clarifying questions. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. And let's see, do we have any takers for public comment? Okay, I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I'm going to close it at this time. Moving on to our action discussion items. First up, school reopening update. Staff will review the progress on the return of students to campuses. Mr. Bear.
Yes, hello again. We'll give Marcy just a moment to get the slides up. All right, great. So we have seen pieces of this before, but we do have some additional information and just want to update you on where we are headed. So next slide, Marcy. We do have today, as Natalie mentioned earlier, our 7th graders returning to campus. So it was Great to be out there this morning and seeing students coming back to campus, 7th graders coming back to campus at Block and Egan. Actually made the news today too, if you've seen it, on Channel 2. They were covering the return of our students to campus. And you can see, according to our schedule, 8th grade will return next Monday, and that'll complete all of our students being back on campus in the blended format. So next slide, Marcy. You're familiar with these, but just important to keep in mind what we are trying to accomplish here. We do know that learning is optimal when our students are on campus in person, but safety of students and staff is of the utmost importance. We are working with our labor groups to make sure we're using science to guide our decisions, and we have done a fantastic job following that so far this year. Next slide. A couple of updates here. We do continue to do our asymptomatic pooled testing utilizing Concentric. We have, you can see, up to 76%, might be a little bit higher than that now, of students participating in the testing. We have not had a positive result yet. We still have one cohort that is too small for testing. And we're expanding that to 7th and 8th grades a little bit later this month. So we look forward to that. The permission slips will be going out, I believe, on Thursday for that to our junior high school students. And we are prepped and ready to go in terms of process for collecting those samples on our junior high school campuses. Because we do have 2 cohorts, we will have collection dates on Tuesday and Thursday of each week. Next slide. Again, Natalie and Elena both mentioned a bit about vaccinations. Educators were eligible beginning on Sunday, February 28th for vaccination in phase 1B of the rollout. We do have our people getting vaccinations through a number of outlets. Santa Clara County itself has been pretty effective in making this available as well. I know our folks are utilizing heavily the Mountain View Community Center site as well as the Levi's Stadium site. The county has this is a pretty continuously moving target here. Earlier this month, you had to be a resident of Santa Clara County in order to get a vaccination. They have expanded that after some feedback, and now it is either a resident or working in Santa Clara County as an educator gets you that appointment. We have had widespread participation as a staff, as an LASD staff. Santa Clara County Office of Education has actually made available some additional appointment slots. They are getting some additional slots as a county to expedite the vaccination of all teachers in Santa Clara County. We have connected a number of teachers, not just teachers, staff, with that as well. So to Elena, who I see is still here, and I don't see Natalie, but I'll be sure to let Ricky know tomorrow. Any employee who has not yet been able to get an appointment, please let me know that directly. And we have a way to ensure you get an appointment in very short order if you're part of the LASD staff. So we'll keep pushing down that road. It's great news. We're excited that our teachers are in that process. A lot of people vaccinated last week, even more coming this week. So as we look ahead by spring break, we should be pretty well vaccinated with both doses. The vast majority of our workforce here in LASD. So that's welcome news. Next slide. Again, I'm not going to read these to you, but I'll just let you skim through them. This is not new, but these again are our some of our community commitments that we expect from everyone in the community, staff, students, families, really to ensure that we are keeping ourselves as safe as possible as we bring back more and more students for in-person learning. So next slide. This is just our, well, it's almost a week outdated now. Tomorrow there will be a new one of these. This is from the state website, covid19.ca.gov, showing Santa Clara County last week moved into the red tier status. They hit the red tier numbers for 2 weeks in a row. So on the 3rd of March, Santa Clara County was officially in red tier. Which has allowed us to open at our junior high schools. You can see the numbers have dropped. The adjusted case count is one of the key metrics they look at, in addition to positivity rate and the equity quartile positivity rate. But the adjusted case rate was the number we were waiting on, and that has dropped. We were looking for it to drop below 7 to hit red tier. It actually dropped to below 6. So that's good news. And so we're actually looking to see if orange tier might be a possibility in the not too distant future for Santa Clara County. Next slide. A reminder of the fact that we are tracking and making publicly available every week. It's updated. The COVID numbers, positive case numbers within the district. And you can see there the number of actual cases on the far right by school. On this particular chart, those numbers could either be staff or students. But on the district's website, you can see it broken down by staff or student over the course of every week of the school year. Just as a reminder to refresh your memory, the left column there is the number of students we anticipate having back or that we have in person on our school campuses physically. And again, not just students, but staff as well. And that center numeric column is the number of cases we would have to have identified as positive within a 14-day period in order to hit that 5% COVID threshold that could quite possibly trigger the county public health department to quarantine a school for a period of time, shut down our entire school. You can see we haven't even been near any of those numbers because the numbers on the right side are actually the numbers over a 5-month period. So we're not even close to approaching that. What it really says here is that we are doing a great job with our mitigation measures. The fact that those cases that have been present by students and staff at school sites have not turned into widespread outbreaks at those schools. So kudos to everyone involved for that. Next slide. Just a little data that I show you each time. So we have had, I think that is technically now 30 cases because we did have one additional case last week. The numbers were posted after this was put together. But we've had 30 cases at our schools. 2 of those have been at the district office level. So on our school sites actually have been 28 cases since we returned back in September, late September. We have only had to move a total of 5 cohorts to quarantine, even though we've had 28 cases on school sites. And that's for a variety of reasons, because we found out about the case when the child was off cohort, so they never had contact. Sometimes staff and students stay home preemptively while they're finding out if they've been sick, so they go that extra step. So the good news is we have only had to quarantine five classrooms since the start. Our weekly average, we're running at about 1.2 cases per week. That number is going down. I think our high water mark there was 1.5 cases per week, but each of the past several weeks, we have had one case identified each week. I think for the last 3 weeks, it's been one case. And just as a reminder, we do post this information publicly, and it's been up there for about 5 months. If you go to the district website, look on the left-hand column where it talks about coronavirus. There's a tab that says coronavirus, and that table will be right in front of you. Next slide. Last slide. Thank you. So that's my update. We are excited to return our 7th and 8th graders to campus. And we are really thankful that we have been back for some period of time, as we have had that opportunity to really implement our practices, refine them, and then leverage the expertise that we have gained over time and really apply it to the opening of our junior high schools. And also each grade level we've brought back subsequently. So thanks to our pioneers who were out there early in our special day classes and primary grades, who really paved the way for us starting to get back in person. And we look forward to more to come.
Thank you, Jeff. Board members, any clarifying questions on Jeff's presentation? Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Vladimir.
Jeff, does this qualify us under state guidelines as fully reopened?
It does. For the purposes of AB 86, we are open. Yes.
Thank you.
Good question. Anyone else?
I think one thing I would add also is, and it's an important point, as we entered red tier last week, another key a key move that was made by the county public health department was that the orders that they had in place, including the K-12 school guidance, has become a set of recommendations rather than the orders. They are now deferring the county to the state orders that are in place for K-12, right? So the consolidated K-12 reopening guidance is now the driving set of orders. This is true in a number of other areas as well. If you think about the travel restrictions and so forth, it's the state orders that are now leading the way. I think Dr. Cody said at the press conference on Wednesday that they were going to be putting all their efforts into vaccinations here on out, and not writing the companion orders to go alongside the states, instead utilizing the state orders that are in place in order to create some consistency and a bit less confusion.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll now move on to public comment. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Okay. Okay, I don't see any takers, any hands raised for public comment. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Board members, would any of you like to provide comment on this agenda item?
You got a raised hand there.
I do? Oh, my goodness. Sorry. Okay, Vadim, my apologies. And let's
Hi,
just,
thanks for taking my question.
sure. We just need to
you-
get
you-
the clock up on the screen. Sorry, Vicky.
that will be quick.
Second. Thank you.
Will you be reporting the number of teachers at each school that have been vaccinated as a percentage? That's all.
Oh, that's it.
Yep.
Thank you. Oh. Okay. Then I would like to officially close public comment. Thank you. Now, board members, would anyone like to provide comment? Vladimir?
I think Jeff said that he expected all teachers to be vaccinated by spring break, which is in a couple of weeks. So going to the effort of reporting the number of teachers who are vaccinated is probably superfluous at this point.
So I'm gonna clarify that, Vladimir. All teachers who choose to be vaccinated will likely have both doses by spring break. Monica, you can probably speak more coherently to this than I.
Yes, thanks, Jeff. So the vaccine is available for those who choose to be vaccinated. It is not a required vaccine. So this is not something that that staff need to report that they've been vaccinated. And they also don't need to choose to be vaccinated if they don't wish to be vaccinated, or if they have other reasons to not be vaccinated.
Yeah, I'll just add it's not something we can require them to report to us under privacy laws. They can volunteer to share the information, but we can't require the reporting of it.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. So, anybody want to comment before I comment?
Sure.
Go ahead, Brian.
So thanks, Jeff. And in some ways, I hate to ask the question, which I'm going to sort of imply even more work, because I know you guys have done a tremendous amount of work together with our teachers to get to the point where we are. But it seems to me that now that we have 7th and 8th grades returning in hybrid, that's kind of a natural sort of end, right, of where we started off in the fall and where we hoped we would have gotten to a lot sooner than now, of course. But so I know we've gotten a lot of comments from families and questions from people who are sort of like, okay, well, what's the next step, right? We've always said we want to be back 5 days in person. What's the path from here to there? You know, I think a lot of significant things have happened over the last couple of weeks, right? The county tier improvements are big. The county health department stepping back from being super prescriptive and kind of deferring to the state, I think is significant. Vaccinations are obviously a huge deal, both for the teachers and for a lot of the members of our community. So I'm sort of wondering, you know, glancing through the site safety plans and our overall return plan, you know, there was nothing in there that suggested an obvious huge hurdle. I mean, other than the logistics and working out the change in details, right, about desk placement and site capacity and all the rest of that stuff between getting from here to 5 days. So, you know, personally, I would love to see us have that conversation with the teachers and our principals and figure out if there is a possibility of getting back 5 days a week at the end of this year. You know, looking at the calendar and taking your spring break date, there's about 4 weeks between now and spring break. And then there's about 6 or 7 weeks of instruction after that. So I think all of our families would like to know if that's a realistic possibility, especially because there's a lot of announcements coming out from other districts and schools about using spring break as kind of a milestone for one last push at the end of the year. And then the other sentiment, and this is my personal preference, is I think we should put a flag in the ground about the fall, and say that we will be back 5 days a week. We will work with our teachers and staff and principals to figure out how to make that happen. But, you know, I think there are a lot of things that we could have done in hindsight mostly, to reopen more quickly this year, but they would have required tremendous amounts of either risk or money or both. I think the path, sort of the view of what the fall will be like is much, much clearer now than it was a year ago for this past fall. And given that we're about to go through our budget cycle, I think now is the right time to figure out, do we need to spend more money in order to ensure that we can open 5 days a week? Because I think we're in a fortunate position where we could do that. And so we shouldn't let the need for extra resources be a barrier to 5 days a week. And my personal analysis is that we have enough clarity that we could make that commitment, although obviously I am but one board member. But so those are my general thoughts on where we go next.
Thank you, Brian. Any other comments on this? Jessica?
Of course, the time I go to hit unmute, my Zoom goes off my screen for a second. Anyway, I just wanted to echo what Brian had to say. It is a natural time for us to start thinking about when we open fully. Definitely want to, as Brian said, put a flag in the ground for the fall and really start figuring out what we can do for this school year, especially our younger students, our elementary students, especially the very youngest. So what we can do in that department for this school year would be great, and definitely all of our students, K through 8, for the fall. And any sort of improvement to time for all grade levels would be great for this spring also. We are, as our case numbers are going down, vaccinations are going up, things are getting better. I do understand that there will always be unknowns for us, but it we have a lot more knowns 1 year later than we had this week last year. And I am very thankful for that. That was a long way of saying I agree with Brian.
Thank you, Jessica. Vladimir, Steve?
Well, the only thing I seem to remember around the conversation we had about possible reopening is the distance between students in classrooms, the ambiguity of the state law. Is there anything we need to be doing to get clarity there, or is that clarity been coming? I think that's the only thing that I need you all to come back and talk to us about. I think everything else looked great. That was the only area that, and it really isn't a no, it's an ambiguous way it's stated or phrased in the guidance to schools. So if we need to put pressure on people to make that clarity known for us, happy to help make that happen. Just need to understand what we need to do to make that move forward. Or if we're fine moving underneath the umbrella with the ambiguity the way it's written, I'm good working either way. But I'd just like to understand what concerns there might be still there.
Yeah, I can definitely find out more about that.
Vladimir, want to comment?
No, I agree with the opening in fall. For me, though, there is one sort of unknown, and that's the new variants that have come out and how badly that will affect us. We don't know, for instance, if our vaccines are effective against the new variants, as far as I know. And if we end up in the unfortunate position of the new variants taking over and our vaccines are no longer effective against that, then we might have a problem. And that's my only concern. Other than that, I think we should open as soon as possible. And if we can open sooner for the younger students, that would be great.
Thank you, Vladimir. So I definitely concur with my other board members. I really want us to start with the assumption that in the fall, we are going to be full-time, 5 days a week, everybody on campus. Jeff, I'd like you to explore what we can do to make that happen. And if it's possible for us to get all of our kids on campus before this school year ends, that would be great, especially our youngest kids. I know we have a really strong relationship with our teachers, so I'd like you to work with them to see what we can do. To Vladimir's point, we don't know what's going to happen in the fall, so I want to know what we can do so that we can act on it immediately. So I'd also like to know roughly how much it would cost to open fully in person, like what we need to buy, what we need to do. I want to make sure that we prioritize that the funds are available to do that, so that if we can't open for the apocalyptic multi-strain scenario, whatever, but if we can, I want to be able to implement that as quickly as possible. So do you, Jeff, feel like you have enough direction to?
Yes, I mean, what I'm hearing from the board pretty consistently here is we need to be planning to open fully in the fall. Come up with a game plan for that. And then if it's possible, starting with younger grades, prioritizing younger grades to open sooner than that, then let's figure out how to do that as well.
Yeah.
And to work with our teachers and our staff to collaborate on that happening.
Exactly. Is there any further refinement to the direction you want to give staff?
I mean, I would love, sorry, just to say, I mean, I would love for us even, we talked about it last time, but, to get summer school in person, whether that's, and things like tents and extra supervision are things that, some other places are doing, things that we tossed around, but didn't want to commit because unfortunately, we're strapped in a lot of ways in a lot of scenarios. And so you don't want to go out and spend $1 million on tents that you then end up not needing or not being able to use depending on what happened. But I think we might be in a position for this summer where it might make sense to spend some money on tents just to make sure that summer school could be outside if it needed to be, to maintain the in-person nature. And of course, we recognize that our teachers and staff are partners in this, right? So it's about developing a plan with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Vladimir? Oh, sorry, unmuted. So I thought you were going to say something. All right, any further comment on this? All right, if not, I'd like to move us along to the next agenda item. We have a special guest. It's our mental health update from CHAC, Community Health Awareness Council. Marcia Delorier, Executive Director, will provide an update regarding CHAC and the services provided to LASD students and staff through our service contract. Mr. Baer? No, sorry.
Yes, I'll just give a quick welcome to Marcia Delorier, joining us from CHAC, their Executive Director. We've had an outstanding partnership with CHAC for many, many years. And this is another example of when there is a crisis like the one we're experiencing, not just us, but worldwide, it is really it is really a key time to leverage those partners we have in the community. And this is one of those examples that is really helping to serve our students well. And I'm happy that Marcia's here to present a bit more about CHAC and the services being provided our district. So Marcia, welcome.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And thanks to the board. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think Monica said it so well, and Jeff as well. This is a great team to work with, and we're so pleased to be able to do that. And this has been obviously a very challenging year, and having that kind of partnership is pivotal. We know that the need for mental health services has increased throughout this pandemic. And the fact that this partnership has been in effect since 1973, it really places the district in a really strong position to meet the needs of the students. And together, it's like having a foundation that we can build on for the success next year and the remainder of this year. So let me proceed with where we are. Marcy, next slide, please. So CHAC strives to build a safer and more harmonious school and community by advancing healthy relationships through our counseling, our classes, and our programs that you can see on the screen here. Our clinic on El Camino is unique. It allows us to provide a broader array of services beyond the school services that we can help the families, adults, as well as the youth that we're serving in the schools. And having the clinic as well as services in the school is a significant advantage to the residents in the community. And we're serving the infants, teens, families, couples, and adults in these programs. And we've been doing it for 48 years. Next slide, please. Another advantage of our unique program is that our services are largely provided by pre-licensed psychologists and master's level mental health professionals. And this allows us to be as value-based and as economical as we can be. And we're really proud of our doctoral internship program. We just received a 10-year accreditation from the American Psychological Association this year, and it really sets a bar for the services that we provide throughout the agency. And just as a picture of the 75 to 80 clinicians that we have at CHAC, the average age is 36 years old, and the median age is 33 years old. We recruit from top schools, the PGSP Stanford's PsyD Consortium, Santa Clara University, Wright Institute, Palo Alto University, et cetera. And it's really important to know that every single case is carefully supervised by a licensed clinical professional. And I think the breadth of this team really allows for a broad range of theoretical styles and modalities and clinical expertise that you get from a multidisciplinary group. Next slide, please. You know, the partnership is so important, and it's really, mental health is complex, and so the team is important. The partnership with the district includes many people that support the students, and we work closely with school psychologists. And to highlight the roles, I just wanted to share that the school psychologists are trained in interventions, specifically within the school context, and trained and focused on evaluations for special education, as well as program development and programs within the school setting. A clinical psychologist, which is the CHAC team, are those that are trained to provide comprehensive mental and behavioral health care to individuals and families across settings, of course, grounded in evidence-based practices. And it really supports our family systems work. CHAC has been a model with family systems work for all of these years, and the ability to provide this across settings is critical. You can see some of the areas of our experience and expertise at the bottom of the slide as well. I'm not going to read them. Okay, next slide, please. Just touching on the COVID response in terms of the services, within 5 days, this is what, next week, a year ago next week, within 5 days of shelter in place, we converted more than 100 clinicians to telehealth. We began the outreach to our 1,100 clients that we had under our care to ensure that their continuity of care was continued. It's so very important. When everything else around the student was changing, they were just abruptly sent home. This continuity of care with their therapist was really valuable. And so we did, just as Jeff is doing in the district, I mean, a lot of pivoting, providing telehealth training, which is more than just being able to do a session across Zoom. So we brought in local and national experts on it. We invested in technology, and we, of course, had to revamp many processes to comply with licensing and other requirements. Next slide, please. Initially, our adoption rate for telehealth was only 50%. You know, people were in shock at that time, and the adjustment to telehealth proved to have a middle-class bias, you know, as it required not only the technology, but also the skills to use email and Zoom. So some people were left out. Now we needed to have parents and caregivers in the home and available during a session, which proved difficult to ensure. We had previously been able to use school personnel that was always available to us for a crisis if we were in a session with a student. Now, we didn't have school personnel available to us on a Zoom call, so we had to make sure that parents and caregivers were aligned with us. And therefore, monolingual parents and caregivers required greater translation services, which we then stepped up to provide to facilitate the counseling. Next slide. With the 50% adoption rate, it was clear to us that we had to pivot to parent support because they were the glue at this point. We know that parental behavior has a bidirectional effect, so our efforts shifted to the parents. For the kids, especially the younger ones who couldn't sustain a full therapy session, we used the balance of our time for parent coaching and support, increasing the hours of our parent conversation by 91% versus the year before. A big upside to telehealth was the advantage of a virtual home visit and the chance to observe the live parent-child dynamic in the home in real time and provide parent coaching. I'll be talking to you about our social emotional learning program that we pivoted to that produced more than 40 videos for fun activities for the kids to do independently, because we said, please don't send one more thing home for parents to do. Let's see if we can help the parents by providing something for the kids, which we did. And when the kids abruptly left school, we reached out to all 150 kids in our groups to help them bring a sense of closure and reassurance that this group just didn't disappear on them. Next slide. We know unequivocally that we live in a very diverse community, and being able to provide effective care means we have to be able to build the trust of the student and the family. And I wanted to highlight how strong our commitment to the diversity, equity, and inclusion work is at CHAC, and how we are committed to doing the very hard work of advancing our initiatives that for everyone and all of our clients, that they feel valued, respected, and included. Next slide, please. The barriers to seeking mental health services are very unique to every culture. And we are providing extensive didactic training to our clinicians to ensure that all of the services at CHAC are offered with compassion and respect and appreciation for the individual differences and the intersectionality of the client that is before us. Because when a client works with a therapist, ideally that reflects them, but understands and appreciates these differences, the trust is built, and then from that point, the work begins. Next slide. So comments about our school partnership and how we work on the campus. On the school campus, we provide Tier 1 support through our Just for Kids and Tween Talk social emotional learning programs and any customized classroom programs that are needed, such as mindfulness or therapeutic art interventions. Last year, we had 417 Los Altos students registered in our social emotional learning program. Our Tier 2 program is the bulk of our program, and this provides the counseling and parent coaching for students that are referred for services by teachers or principals, the school psychologists, the parents, or the students themselves. And our Tier 3 support is for those cases that really require more intensive intervention. And there is another example of having the clinic setting that is so valuable because a child who may be experiencing significant trauma, the school setting may not be ideal. We certainly can't send them back to math class after a session like that. So the clinic is ideal for that. And this is where we can also bring in the whole team that might be supporting them, physicians and others. Next slide, please. So in terms of numbers, last year we served 534 students with 3,800 appointment hours and over 700 hours of collateral work with parents, physicians, and other members of the students' team of support. The numbers that you see on the right are the first half of this year, September basically through December. We see that the numbers are certainly not halfway there. And really that's because our social emotional learning program was not able to be offered extensively in the first half of this year because of the logistics of of getting together 6 or 8 kids in a group, and the logistics of getting parents to coordinate for a time that 6 and 8 would be together. And also the more important factors of confidentiality of a child speaking in one of those groups and the respect for all of that. So the logistics were significant, more the kids on Zoom. So we're working towards that, and you'll see that in a couple of slides in the future. Okay, next slide, please. Here you can see the number of clients by school and the service hours that are provided. I think if you look at this, I mean, one of the questions that you might be asking is why is Block so low? And it's not because the Block students aren't getting some great care. In fact, the district has hired one of CHAC graduates to provide the services for that school. And so therefore they're not reflected in the CHAC numbers. But I think you can rest assured that the students are getting some very good care there. Okay, next slide, please. These are some anecdotal perspectives from the clinician about the challenges that the LAS students and their families are experiencing. Not surprisingly, the students are reporting higher rates of anxiety and depression, lack of motivation, and increased loneliness. The families and the students are often less likely to seek out help and resources. A lot of people are saying we need something, but they're not willing to take on one more thing that they feel very burdened by. So they're often isolating themselves. There's an increase in overall stress levels due to the family relationship dynamics and challenges within the student social groups. For those students that were already at risk for mental health crises and challenges before the pandemic began, there seems to be an even bigger increase in anxiety. So it's just exacerbated things. And as I mentioned before, some challenges, including technical difficulties. Not all students have access to high-speed internet. And students also express frustration on how often they're on Zoom, as I think we all are. Next slide, please. But here are some of the benefits from telehealth. We're seeing the students in their room or their home and gaining valuable insight into the family dynamic. We can help as we see a struggle or a situation that's occurring real time on the screen. And this is a really big advantage to the work because often previously we would hear it reported after the fact. So the opportunity to see it real time has been very, very valuable. And we can also work around the student schedule more easily, as well as the parents for meetings. And as evidenced by our request to make sure that any time that we're seeing the students, it's working around the school schedule. And the student can access a therapist weekly. And sometimes this relationship is their only connection to the outside world, or that they feel connected to. Next slide, please. Some of the top reasons for the referrals from, again, principals or administrators or teachers that they're observing on the Zoom classroom are anxiety, some social behaviors, self-esteem, and academic performance. The next slide, if you will, please, shares that these are the top issues from the therapist's perspective. So what happens after we get underneath why the external symptom, why they were referred? The top being interpersonal skills and challenges, such as social withdrawal or excessive shyness, selective mutism, social awkwardness. You can see anxiety and depression as second and third, with anxiety to include things such as separation anxiety or social anxiety or self-harm, and depressive symptoms as well. And that's what we really work towards on prevention on some of those three. So I thought you might be interested in what we see as the top issues and what we don't see. We're not seeing acculturation issues or as much grief and loss, at least not yet, as we all come back emerging from this pandemic. Next slide, please. Assessment and outcome measures are something that we continually both strive for and struggle with in terms of effectively being able to see the impact of the work. And our, as we use an SDQ evidence-based measure, and our top presenting issues are showing a 67% improvement on our issue focus scale. And we do this over time. Okay, next slide, please. CHAC has been proud, and I've been at CHAC for a little over 4 years now, and internally the team is always very proud of our response to need. So in addition to our intervention work and our counseling work, prevention is obviously very important. And I wanted to mention a few prevention services. Our First 5 Family Resource Center, again, our social emotional learning program in the 3rd, 5th middle school, and our MATE program, which I'll talk to you in a minute about, our Summer Bridge program, and the Suicide Contagion. Our Family Resource Center, our programs offered to ages 0 through 5, and these are just help young families to have a healthy start in life, and are extensive. And again, all of these are on our website, but these allow families to launch successfully and prepare these kids for kindergarten. The FRC pivoted to virtual recreation of their classes and parent education and coaching and consultation. We saw families not normally able to participate due to time or traffic constraints. Now they could participate. And again, staff could observe the families in the home. With our families facing difficult situations, we formed social media campaigns to address diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, and many of the difficult situations and frankly, racism that we are unfortunately hearing more and more of. And so we're there to respond to these families and talk and work through that. Next slide, please. Our social emotional learning programs are another great prevention, and they help enhance relationship and social skills. And these groups of 6 to 8 students meet once a week for 8 consecutive weeks. And we typically offer this a fall section, a winter, and a spring program for the more than 400 students in the 3rd and 5th grades and somewhat in the middle school. This year, we pivoted to online program and modified it to be applicable to the 4th grade as well as the 3rd and 5th grade. And to address some of the loneliness issues, we're very excited to have created a buddy program through our teen advisory group, in which an older high school student serves as a role model and a buddy to younger students. Hence the name they came up with, which is called the MATES program. And the school psychologist, Los Altos school psychologists are referring students for this, and we're training the older students, the high school students, on how to bond with their mate, how to talk about feelings that might come up or more extensive situations should they occur. Again, we always have a licensed clinician available for them. And we're also teaching them about boundaries for themselves as high school students working with the younger ones. So this is just, this program and our plugged in program are just launching this year. And this is just as we understand some of the needs and try to step up and meet those needs with the kids. So particularly some of the students that are experiencing a lot of social isolation, this buddy program may prove to be very effective. Next slide, please. Regrettably, unfortunately, another community need that we responded to was responding to the death by suicide of a high school student last year. We know from the CDC reports and that experts in the community that a community is at risk for a contagion for a year after a death by suicide. So CHAC immediately responded by diverting 12 experienced licensed clinicians that have been in the district and around for many, many years within 90 minutes of receiving the call that unfortunate morning. And we remained there for many weeks with this team, or parts of this team. So in concern for this risk of the contagion and the well-being of our students on the high school campus, we identified 400 potentially at-risk students and prepared and implemented a clinically appropriate interventions. How did we reach them? What did we say? approaching things in a way that would not re-trigger any student trauma. And through the coordinated, and here's the partnership board again, and through the coordinated efforts of the school staff, external partners, and CHAC, I am so pleased to say, and I've breathed a great sigh of relief, that we passed as a community together the 1-year mark last October of this potential contagion risk. Next slide, please. Last spring, right, a year ago this time or a few months hence, we were really concerned about flattening the curve of the mental health impact that we thought was going to be seen if the kids came back in September. Well, little did we know, as we all know now, it turned out to be otherwise, but we offered a summer bridge program for the very first time. And this was an unprecedented expansion of the counseling services over the summer. We created this bridge program for almost 200 student clients. And we raised the money to provide these services for free for these kids that, and some of them was by request, wanted to continue over the summer. So we tripled our summer staff to accommodate this. And we continued access to parents and caregivers to provide the support. And 36 LASD students participated in this program. We're looking at this summer, but it's a different situation this summer than last for sure. Next slide, please. We also knew that many in the community were hurting, so we initiated community outreach to provide support through webinars. And we delivered, coping and thriving during a pandemic in May, and the news events that schools were returning virtually. We had a community town hall supporting families' mental health during COVID. And so we have created and continue to provide these types of services for teacher support groups, offering Wellness Wednesdays. Actually, Shali participated with us, so we were delighted in the CHAC bedtime story program. We are now creating Wellness Water Cooler, which is a drop-in support for teachers as opposed to a focused group, as well as some SAGA middle school prevention support groups at CHAC. Next slide, closing toward an end. And finally, I just wanted to mention our Latinx program is a very unique program at CHAC. It has been in existence for decades. And the reason this program is unique is that it not only services the clients and the families in their Spanish-speaking language, but we also provide all the clinical supervision in Spanish so that we are not focused on the translation that would occur between a provider and their clinical supervisor. This is a renowned program, and many Spanish-speaking clinicians seek CHAC for that service. And so we served 196, almost 200 unduplicated families in 2020, and we continue to provide extensive support for our families. In closing, let me say that, if you do the research, no one knows. The long-term impact of the pandemic on our mental health system is just unknown. There will be, it's predicted, a significant tail on the mental health effects, and the secondary effects will outlast this pandemic. Mental health demand is expected to spike after the pandemic with upticks in many issues. And cultivating supportive interventions, and we hope to be implementing therapeutic art intervention programs and other important programs for healing and creating a sense of caring. And those interventions that have been deemed to be effective in helping people re-engage, caring, self-efficacy, connectedness, hope, and a sense of safety. And that connectedness, by the way, we think is imperative. And what is our vision looking forward with LASD? Continuing the partnership and collaboration. We will have next year 15 clinicians in 9 schools. 9 will be from the marriage and family therapist training as master's providers, and 6 from the PhD program or PsyD program. We hope to engage more services with special education populations so we can support that. Increase prevention programs, increased collaboration with all the school sites. We have a new director of school-based services and really focused on enhancing service and collaboration and connection. And actually our Back Together reentry groups, I was just looking as we were speaking earlier, that we met with Erin Green today, and they're very excited to bring this art intervention program to help with reentry of groups that will, we believe and the evidence suggests, to really help reduce the anxiety of students returning to the campus. And that's hopefully we'll proceed forward with our Back Together program. Next slide, please. Where are we here? I should be on the last slide. I enclose by inviting you to our CHAC Mental Health Awareness Month in May. This is in place of our Changing Lives Together breakfast. And unfortunately, we can't have that live, so I promise that this month of activities will be informative and fun. And also want to thank you very much. As you know, CHAC is a partnership both financially as well as service providing, and any ways to give, go to our CHAC website, because we would certainly appreciate that support as well. So that's in closing, and I want to thank you for your attention and support.
Thank you, Marcia. That was a really wonderful presentation, and it's great to have kind of a snapshot of what CHAC, of all the many things that CHAC does for us on our campuses. Do any of my school board members have clarifying questions on Marcia's presentation? Nope. Okay, then I'd like to open it up for public comment. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Let me just see. I don't see any hands raised for public comment. Going once, twice, 3 times, done. I'm closing public comment. Board members, would you like to comment on Marcia's presentation? Steve.
It's a clarifying question as much as anything else, probably. A couple things. One is, are the students that are currently in our virtual school being shown in your statistics as from their traditional homeschool, or we had to create a different way to reach out to those students?
If I'm understanding the question, Steve, the numbers that you're seeing include those students that we're seeing through telehealth that are referred this year. And so that includes the telehealth services.
Okay.
And we haven't been able to do any in person. I will say that we have encouraged, just like the district, of having our mental health providers have the vaccine, and working very hard at the preparation when the school is ready to have us back, that we would be able to support that need as necessary.
Maybe Jeff or Sandra can you understand the question I'm trying to ask?
I can check on that, but it's my understanding that the students at virtual school, for the purposes of this, are identifying with their home school.
Made sense. And then the other thing that you traditionally, Jack, has done a really good job of is family support. And I see that you already engaged with Erin about potential things to reach out to children to help them transition back to school. Are we planning anything to reach out to families? Because I think a lot of the parents could use a little support over the summer to figure out, calm some anxieties around that. And are we working with you on anything around there?
That's a great question, Steve. I'd like to be able to offer some support for parents and engage parent groups. We do have, that's why we created Wellness Wednesdays and some drop-in for parents, and we'll certainly use our opportunity in May to make that more widely known, so that parents have a place to come as well. And of course, we'll ask your support in spreading that word as well. But I think that's a great suggestion. Appreciate that.
And
And
can I just
if I
add
could just
sort of-
piggyback on that really quick, just to continue a thought. Marcia, I think about as well some kind of education to help parents and staffs ultimately, but I think parents as well, just with the identification of stress, of anxiety, of crisis, right? Because I think we are very well going to be in a situation where we're going to have more students potentially displaying that than we have typically in the past. And understanding what it looks like or might look like early, I think would be helpful.
Duly noted. But I will tell you that this Back Together program is specifically designed to take that anxiety and sort of flatten that curve, if you will. And as successful as the summer program was last summer, I'm hoping that this type of program will provide the same. But absolutely, I take full note, helping parents and staff to identify what that looks like and when is the time to refer, right? When do you, how do we help them as parents? And then if it reaches some other level, how do we know when that is?
So just tangentially, we have done some periodic parent education. When I say we, I'm sorry, I mean Shaq has done some community outreach parent education stuff. And I think that it's one way of reaching parents. It's not the only way, obviously, but I think this would be a really good topic, Marcia, for future community engagement. And I want to thank Jessica, who always forwards all of these announcements about Jack goings on to our PTAs and through the PTAs through our parents. But if there's better ways to reach our parents, then of course, as many of them as we can get to these trainings would be great.
But I think really along the lines of what Shally has said, something that's really focused on what the parents need right now, maybe the thing that truly brings them in. And we can market all we want, but things are getting lost in this Zoom world.
Yeah.
But I think if it's really so laser focused on the issues at hand for them, it may be the winner in all of this.
Great point. Target marketing to bring them in, if you will. Parents are so overwhelmed right now, and so I hear the need for riveted focus to help them identify.
I think that we need our parents working with our teachers, working with our staff to support our kids as they re-enter normal, school life in the fall. And I say this all the time, but I'm going to say it again. Mental health is a community issue. It is not just the issue of one sector or the other. And so we all have to work together to address this. I do have a question, but I'm going to punt to Vladimir first and then Brian.
Marcia, thank you. I will say that when I was on the board of CHAC a couple of years ago, you brought a sense of stability to CHAC that's been really appreciated. So thank you very much for that. Just roughly, can you tell me what the caseloads are per clinician at the schools in terms of percent of what they could normally handle? That's all. To tell me that it's 3 or 7. Well, how much slack is there in the system there?
Right now, you mean
Yes.
this year? There's about I should know. It's about maybe 20-30% slack in some schools. Other schools, they're completely full and on a wait list. Okay. Typically a clinician will carry 10 to 12 cases. In a 6-hour day, they see them for an hour or so. Okay. But yeah, we have some slack on it. The other, Vladimir, our clinicians are dealing with the same thing parents are. They are parents. They have kids at home. They are trying to juggle a job, and it's not something where they, I can look away for a moment, but when you're in a session with a child, you cannot do that. So we also have our clinicians that are in training, and some of them don't have private spaces in their home. They're conducting from their cars and other challenges. And so we've been dealing with all of the same kind of issues that the society is actually.
Thank you for that. One of the things that runs around in the back of my mind is how many parents are we not reaching? And you can't answer that question because you haven't reached the parents, so you don't know that they haven't been reached. But I can imagine that if a parent is not comfortable with the internet, they would have a really hard time knowing about and reaching out and getting a hold of some help that they might need. And so the more you can think about, the more you can try to address that, the better it would be for everybody, I think.
We actually did a lot of that, and that's where we find this this gap. So one of our schools, one of your schools, we have someone reaching out to the families that we are not seeing the students in the classroom. What is happening there and why? And the reason we had to hire another translation service is because those that were available were spending so much time helping parents. It wasn't just the access to technology in a Google Chromebook. It was getting them over the feelings of low self-esteem that they did not know how to use email, right? They did not know how to help their child with this. And this took hours, frankly, of time to walk someone through this. So we've been addressing that. I agree with you. How do you know what you aren't reaching? We're trying to work with the schools for the kids that we aren't seeing.
Yeah, thank you. That's all I had.
Ryan?
Yeah, thank you, Marcia, both for being here tonight and for all of your work over the last 4 years. I second Vladimir's kudos. And I just wanted to, this isn't really a question, but more of a comment. We heard from Randy last week that with the state aid package and with the federal aid package that now looks like it's going to pass quite soon, we could have substantial extra resources specifically aimed at trying to recover from the pandemic and get everything back together. So I would encourage you to, and Jeff and his whole team to have conversations about, is that staffing number that you had on that slide, is that the right number? Is this a year where maybe we could do more to try to eliminate those backlogs? I don't know if you've talked about maybe having somebody at summer school. We're doing a very different summer school this year where we'll have students on campus all day. And so maybe we could reach students there in a way that wouldn't have been practical in past years. So I would encourage you and our administration to come to us with funding requests for additional resources over the next 12 months. Because I think we will have some
jump on that.
Because I think we will have some one-time money, and we know that the need is going to be enormous. So
yeah, and appreciate that, Brian. Actually, I've been also working with our and thanks to Jeff's help with this and thoughts on it, of working with our city partners as well, for having everybody recognize, as Charlie said, that this is a team effort, right? And this is everybody involved, and it's not just doesn't fall to the school. But yes, I will take that up because there are some key positions and services that we could provide, and that's why we were actually reaching out to Aaron today. So I will follow up with Jeff and Randy, and thank you.
Thank you. Jessica?
Along the lines of trying to make sure we make families understand we have this service, not unlike what Vladimir was saying. How do we know who we haven't got in touch with? I think there are certain ways we can help with that. One would be that maybe Marcia does a shortened presentation to the PTA presidents, or we have, at least one person at each school. It could end up being the PTA presidents, but being an ambassador saying, like, we have this mental health service. Do you know about it? Anytime I have a parent saying, this is happening with Johnny, and they've got anxiety, this, that, and that, I always say, have you tried to get a chat counselor? I know you're working hard as a parent, but there's only so many things we have in our toolbox as parents. And sometimes the kid just needs to talk to another trusted adult. So I've, in my own way, have been an ambassador, but I'm one person and I only know so many people. And I'm an ambassador because I've used your services as a parent. I definitely wanted my children to have someone else to talk to. I used all my tools, but they weren't fine enough to get to the point. And you and your services have helped me immensely with at least 2 of my children. And I'm thankful for that. And I will, tell everybody about that. But we need more people, and like myself, getting out there and telling people. And I think it would be helpful for you to talk to our different parent leaders, perhaps in a PTA president's meeting, because many people don't use the services because they don't know about them.
That's exactly right. And it's also the stigma, Jessica, so I appreciate the comment. Our first event in May is focused on letting people see who a clinician is and what does it sound like, taking away the mystique of what is therapy. And it is very, it is sometimes challenging to have your child go into therapy. And so there's all kinds of issues around it, but that's what the first event in May is, May 5th, I believe is the date. I think this focus for parents is what I'm hearing, and I'm going to take that back and see if we can up the services for them.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments for Marcia? Thank you. Well, that was an amazing presentation. And it's, like I said before, it's really great to see how much CHAC does in our schools. And I hope through the presentation that our audience at home appreciates how much CHAC does in the community as well. So I would love for everyone to visit CHAC's website, chacmv.org, learn more about CHAC. And May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and CHAC is right on top of it with something every week. So I hope everybody checks that out as well. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you so much for being here tonight. All right, I'm going to move us along to our next agenda item, our Local Control and Accountability Plan Update. Mrs. McGonigal will share a proposed update to the 2020-23 LCAP goals, actions, and services, including a systematic way to highlight the district initiatives in development. Mrs. McGonigal.
Thank you. So it is that time of year again. Get excited, everybody. It's LCAP season. Next slide, Marcy. So I needed to go back and do, we've all been very hyper-focused on returning our kids to school and making sure that we're serving our students and our staff as best we can this year. So I needed to give myself a little refresh on where we've been in the last year around our LCAP, which, as you all know, is our required state accountability plan that goes to our county and after it's approved and adopted by you in June. So just about a year ago, well, I'll go there. Up at the top there, I just highlighted our previous goals. So we had these 4 goals for probably, I don't know, Jeff, like 8 to 10 years. They were really the focus of our blueprint and our strategic plan. And at the end of the 2019-2020 school year, we were in a transitional process. January of last year, January of 2020, I brought to the board some new proposed goals, actions, and services. We had a whole slide presentation. We did stakeholder engagement. We made some changes. We got lots of feedback, and we were ready to kind of move forward with some new goals. And then, of course, COVID-19 hit, and at the end of last year, we did not adopt an LCAP. It was waived. And then this September, instead of a formal LCAP, even though it had the same acronym, you all adopted in September a learning continuity and attendance plan, which was a very shortened version of an LCAP, really focused on our response to the pandemic and ensuring that students had adequate learning opportunities. So that was a little history lesson. We were in the middle of transitioning from some goals that we had worked with for quite some time. We had come up with some new goals and actions and services, and then boom, the world has turned upside down, as you all know. So next slide. So I've really been thinking about this as I've gone now to 2 different trainings and what have you, and we will be required to adopt a 3-year LCAP looking forward. So a lot of the chatter at my meetings with my colleagues and those who write the LCAPs for the districts within our county is how can we simplify the process a little bit, the heavy document itself. We know that one of the most important pieces of the LCAP is to provide transparency to not only our board, but our stakeholders on how we use specific monies. And really, I was thinking, how can we reduce the bureaucracy, the process of developing the LCAP and going deep into the work we do as a school district is, I don't know, is always the best use of my time and the time of people who develop the LCAP. And I think in the end, we end up approving a document that highlights every dang thing we do in our district. And then nobody ever looks at it again because it ends up being a 30 to 75 page document that doesn't really feel particularly user friendly. So I was really thinking, how could we really do a better job of highlighting the initiatives that really get buried in this bureaucratic document? So before we go into the next one, I wanted to remind you a little bit about the LCAP and the way that it is organized. And we really have to make sure that we are highlighting the 8 state priorities. Back on the very first slide, that little wheel highlights the 8 state priorities, but those priorities are broken into 3 sections. One is conditions for learning, and this is really all about having all of the things we need to educate students, having highly qualified teachers, having adequate facilities, having textbooks, having core curriculum across the board. That's like one bucket of those state priorities. Another is all about pupil outcomes and how do we make sure that we are highlighting what we want for students, not only academic outcomes, but also social and emotional outcomes and other outcomes that create a really well-balanced whole child. And then the last portion of the LCAP is really supposed to be about engagement. How do we make sure our families are involved, our staff is a part of it, and that outreach and engagement is prioritized. And lastly, the whole piece of the LCAP is really supposed to be written around our areas of greatest need. Who are the students that we are not serving and who are not coming, my gosh, my brain is fried, not gaining the outcomes as their peers are gaining, right? Not achieving to standard, essentially. So with all of these pieces in mind, next slide. I did a little brainstorming around this, and I'm really proposing tonight a shift in how we talk about the work that we're doing. Really moving from what I'm calling a kitchen sink LCAP, where we put every little thing of greatness into it, to a much more streamlined and focused LCAP, same or very similar goals, but much more focused actions and services. And then also creating another tool or process that really highlights our initiatives in development. And this really came about from an email I received from Vladimir a couple of weeks ago, who was asking me, why don't we do any pilots in our school district? And I was thinking, oh my gosh, we have so many different things going on and nobody knows about it. So clearly, the LCAP process is really not communicating the great things that we're doing. So next slide. So what could this look like? One is the LCAP itself. So I have a little supporting document that hopefully you downloaded. So if we look at the 4 goals, so we had 4 goals that we had looked at last January, and I made a very slight modification to the one that has the little star by it. But these I propose continue to be our goals. So within that conditions for learning, we ensure that all students have access to equitable conditions of learning. And then on the accompanying document, you can see what those proposed actions and services include. Underneath people, outcomes, and achievement, I really want you to think about this bucket in two areas. One is the general education for all students, that all students should receive a high quality core instructional experience that leads to equitable outcomes and yearly growth. And then the second part, that goal number 3, is really for students who are not achieving where we want. It provides a frame for us to think about those tiered supports and systems to make sure that our students who are not achieving are getting additional supports, actions, and services. So that's the third goal there. And then we keep our engagement goal around making sure that we have a safe school environment. You can read it all there. So the document, that supporting draft document, has much greater detail. Next slide. As an accompaniment to our LCAP. So when I go about starting next week, writing the LCAP, it will be around those 4 documents. But what I would like to also be creating on the side is this initiatives and development report. So again, you have a little draft document of this. I've already added a few things to it that I just completely forgot about. And from there, I really took the old goal 4 that we had, or old goal 2 that we had talked about last January, this idea of preparing students for high school and beyond, and really focusing on our portrait of a learner and the 6 C's. When I think of all of the really intentional and exciting and student-centered work that we're doing as a district, I really pulled a lot of these initiatives out of our old LCAP frame and thought about them in 3 different places. Are they a developing initiative? We're really right at the beginning doing some of those very small pilots, or not even quite yet pilots. Are they more in the solidifying frame where we have some energy around this and we're scaling it? Or has this really become an LASD practice? So when I think about having these 2 pieces of work, our LCAP with our new goals, actions, and services, and this initiatives in development report, I can see providing updates around our initiatives somewhat regularly. That could look like, as they move from one bucket to the next, it could be hey, Sandra, we're really interested in learning more about this. It could be as part of my closing comment. It could be a part of a regular board meeting on a monthly cadence, but a small snapshot of what's happening with these initiatives as they develop over time. Next slide. So tonight I'm really asking you for some direction. I need to get started working on our LCAP. We have stakeholder engagement that needs to take place beyond the board as well to make sure that the public gets some opportunities to provide some input. So I'm asking you tonight just for some direction. What do you think about kind of separating the 2 pieces out? Any changes you are interested in around the goals, actions, or services? And then if you are okay with moving forward with this idea of an initiatives type report, what type of cadence would be helpful, interesting, wanted by the board to kind of keep abreast of what's happening in the district? And then, like I said, stakeholder engagement is coming rapidly. We have our curriculum council meeting on Wednesday. We'll be setting up our next DLAC meeting. So all of those required stakeholder meetings are coming up between now and June, when we come to you with the full LCAP for adoption.
Great. Thank you, Sandra. Board members, does anyone have any clarifying questions for Sandra on her presentation? Okay, seeing none, we will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. May I just see? Okay, I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I'm going to go ahead and close it. Board members, does anyone want to provide comment on this agenda item? Steve?
There's a couple things. One is, it'd be great if, I like the structure, it makes perfect sense to me. Like the idea of the initiatives piece being pulled out and highlighted. I think a quarterly update would be enough for me, unless something major league happened in between out of cycle, but a kind of a quarterly cadence would be a great way to just check in on those. One of the things I'd like to see called out in the first one that you had up there of on the LCAP goals is a technology availability that we made sure, because when we rolled out the rural school, we went through a heavy lift to make sure everybody had access at home and hotspots and stuff. So making sure that's woven into something we're measuring on an ongoing basis would be good. Something I think we need to consider. And then I didn't notice on the list of what you're talking about is the equity stuff that Greg's leading and Shally's part of. It doesn't show up. I didn't notice it. If it's there, I apologize, I didn't see it. So making sure that that gets brought in and is something we're constantly monitoring would be great as well.
Yep.
Thanks, Steve. Brian?
Yeah, thank you, Sandra. I second everything that Steve just said, I think, in terms of structure and cadence and all the rest of it. My one question or comment on the goals themselves is goal 2, which says all LASD students will experience high quality core instruction that results in equitable outcomes, et cetera. And that doesn't seem ambitious enough to me, sort of on two fronts. One is that it doesn't sort of say anything about what we're trying to provide to sort of all students in terms of, especially at the junior high level, I'm thinking about, you know, sort of whether it's languages or other enrichments and electives and that kind of thing. And I think we should be a little bit more ambitious and try to do more than we're doing now. And then the other thing was that it seemed to me that those things should be offered to traditionally underserved students as well, right? Like we shouldn't sort of, if we have a student who's struggling, you know, some systems, especially in the past, would say, okay, we're going to only do math and English for this student. And I think history has shown that that's not a good approach, right? That if the more you narrow down what a student has access to, you're not actually likely to get better outcomes. And so I want to make sure that that's incorporated into the goal as well, that the goal should be, we should be shooting higher as far as the enrichments and electives we can provide, and we should be shooting to provide that for all students, regardless of their current English fluency or, you know, overall academic level or whatever.
Yep.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Jessica or Vladimir? Jessica?
While I was listening to Brian's suggestions, I think it may be a matter of taking the word core out of goal 2. High quality instruction that results in it's all instruction. It includes everything. Anyway, that's just a suggestion. And I agree with him that it should be beyond reading and writing and math. And then just because we just had the CHAC presentation, as I look at goal 3, I just want to make sure it's like we have social emotional development for all students in it, but it took me a while to actually find that in the sub bullets. It wasn't it wasn't as emphasized as I would like, especially during these times. And so
take a look at goal 4, Jessica, just to see if that one feels more focused.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. I was Ed didn't turn the page over. Yes, okay, yes. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. And I think that is it. I agree with I agree with your simplification. I agree with pulling this stuff out. We do need to highlight this stuff. It is part of the marketing. It will help us with marketing our schools. And so anything we can do in that department, I highly recommend. So thank you. It's a great idea. So thank you, Vladimir, for pointing that out to her. And thank you, Sandra, for doing the work. So awesome.
Thank you, Jessica. Vladimir?
Yes, Sandra, thank you for pointing out that I was clueless. It's fine. I'm not upset at all. The only thing I would change about this, or the only thing I would suggest is, and I mentioned this to you before, that you incorporate a theory of change in this. And one way that you might look at it is, if we do this, whatever it is you're trying to do, which requires these resources, we predict that we'll get these results and we'll measure it this way. So that sort of ties everything together in a way that allows us to see how well we're doing, basically. I don't have any concerns about the goals themselves. They're pretty, at this point in time, they're pretty high level, and I assume that you'll drill down a little bit more. But I think it's important to be able to articulate a theory of change for each one of those goals, because otherwise what happens is we spend some more money on it that we didn't really know that we spent it on. And we sort of get results that we think that we are doing better, but we don't really know why we're, that kind of stuff. So I think that articulating a theory of change for each one of these would be really, really valuable. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Vladimir. I don't really have anything much more to add. I completely agree with Steve and Brian and Jessica's comments. Thank you to Vladimir, because I think it's really exciting that you have the LASD initiatives. I didn't actually know either. So it's very exciting, because I think we do a lot of innovative, really cool stuff here in LASD. And I think it'd be great to bring it to the light and talk about it more. I personally would have loved a monthly update. But I will defer to anybody who wants a quarterly one. I'm just super excited about the stuff that you're doing. There's stuff coming up in this agenda that I'm very excited about. I just want to say I like your approach to splitting this up, and thank you for moving away from the kitchen sink.
Great.
But
excellent.
Awesome work. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I appreciate, I did make some notes and we'll modify some of those actions and services and the goal, second goal specifically. So thank you. It's very helpful.
Just one question, one comment on the frequency. If we could somehow or other tie it to the cadence of semesters and stuff like that in school, that would be the right thing to do. I do not want a monthly update. I think quarterly is just fine.
Right.
I should just have like personal monthly meetings with Sandra so that I can get my fix of these things. But actually, our next agenda item is something that I'm very excited about hearing more about. It's the Junior High School Pursuit of Biliteracy Award, which I think is super cool. Mrs. McGonigal will share the work being done with the World Language Department around an LASD Pursuit of Biliteracy Award, including a resolution for the Board of Trustees to approve as part of the process. Mrs. McGonigal.
Great. So I've had the great privilege of working with our fabulous World Language Department across both schools. And we are excited tonight to bring to you this Pursuit of Biliteracy Award. You may or may not be aware that the high schools, and including our local MVLA high school district, participates in the California Seal of Biliteracy Award. So that is the high school version of I have officially become biliterate. And so we're really talking about the the preceding portion of that award. So next slide, Marcy, and we'll get into some details. So Vladimir, this was my attempt at a theory of action here. If we develop a Pursuit of Biliteracy Award, we will encourage a pursuit of 2 or more languages, which will affirm positive attitudes towards multilingualism, validate the use of multiple languages for all students, and develop students prepared to thrive in our complex world. I'm missing a metric, I do see. But really, we do want to make sure that our students know that having biliteracy, and I did a whole study around bilingualism versus biliteracy, and we talked as a department, we're really pursuing biliteracy, which is bilingualism is spoken word only, and our language programs really get into a fully biliterate student experience in their second language. But we do want to make sure that our students understand that we value their pursuit of becoming biliterate. And it is an academic pursuit. It is something that will certainly benefit our community, our individual students as they move forward in their not only education, but in their career. Next slide. So the state does have a process that we need to go through. And so tonight we're coming to you with a resolution. And so one of the steps is that the governing board adopts a resolution in support of the award. The World Language Department, and I think I saw Madame Clavijo, Patty Clavijo from Block and Egan here. But the World Language Department is working on developing the criteria. I kind of put our first pass on the next slide, I believe, but one of their jobs is really defining the criteria for the award. And then they are also developing an application so students understand that it is, I am pursuing this award actively. And Patty Schwann, who's our junior high art teacher, is working with her students on trying to develop the actual digital award itself, which is pretty exciting. So that is the work that will be happening this spring. I know the language teachers are excited to kind of launch this with their current 7th graders. So the first awards would not go out until next year's graduating class. But just some details that we still need to kind of finalize before we get there. Next slide. So as we think about the award and the details of the award, those students who are eligible are students, whether they could still be English learners, they could be English fluent students, they could be reclassified English learners, but we're really looking at students who are enrolled in one of our world language courses for their 2 years in junior high school. We offer Spanish and French at both Block and Egan, and we offer Mandarin over at Egan. Our working criteria right now is that students receive 3s and 4s on their report card in world language throughout their 2 years. And I do want to remind you, this is a Pursuit of Biliteracy Award. It is really a participation award. Like, I've made a commitment to want to become biliterate by the time I graduate from high school. So we want the award to be something to strive for, but not something that feels unattainable for students, and that they actually lose their interest in pursuing biliteracy by the time they hit high school, because perhaps they feel like they had to struggle a little bit in a certain area. And our teachers in our world language department do, like I said, it's more than just bilingualism. So students throughout their 2 years are learning around reading, writing, certainly speaking and listening, but there is a whole culture component as well, which is an important part of kind of developing that whole broad understanding of a different culture outside of our own. Next slide. So tonight, I hope you have a copy of the resolution. Marcy was kind enough. I think we had a couple of glitches at the beginning to get that resolution posted, but We're happy to hopefully get an adoption or approval of the resolution tonight so we can move forward with the work around getting the award going.
Great, thank you, Sandra. This is exciting. Board members, any clarifying questions for Sandra on her presentation? Steve?
Just a quick one. I can still take language and not pursue the award, correct?
Correct.
Because I struggled through, English is a struggle. So I can't imagine in 2 years becoming that good in another language. And we all know my Spanish never made it to that level. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't putting an additional burden on a child who might be struggling with other things. So thanks.
Brian?
Oh, I see. So the criteria, so I'm a little bit confused actually, because in reading the presentation, it seemed like the criteria was receiving 3s and 4s.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to ask, when I looked at some of the Seal of Biliteracy materials, like on the county site and the state site,
Yep.
They all have an additional, like whether it's a presentation, oral or written, or some kind of extra project, right? It's not just I did all the schoolwork that everybody was asked to do and I did it well. It's that I also did something else. So is that not part of it, or that is part of it? Or
no, we've talked about that and going back and forth. The teachers do so many of those types of things within their curriculum. I don't know that they were interested. I don't know if Madame Clavijo wants to chat about that because they had more conversations about the criteria, but we wanted to make it doable and easy for students to want to continue really by doing well throughout the course, right? And not add additional layers of work on top of it. So it was unattainable or it felt unattainable for some students. I think
okay.
Madame Clavijo might want to chat a little bit.
I have another comment, but I'll save it till after public comment.
Is her microphone enabled?
Marcy, can you get, there she is. Bonjour, Madame.
Bonjour. Hi, nice to see everybody. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Sandra, for proposing this to our language department. I would just like to, those were some really good questions that I can answer because I've been doing this for a long time. I taught at Half Moon Bay High School, levels French 1 all the way AP. And we brought this program into our school to really promote language, and it really worked. I was able to grow my AP program tremendously and keep kids in the program. And as far as our Block and Egan kids go, I know there was a question about, oh my gosh, are we expecting them to be like UN translators? Absolutely not. What this means is students who achieve 2 years of Spanish, French, or Mandarin at the junior high level, they're working at a junior high level. So that's like A1. If you know anything about language levels, European language levels, that's nothing more than an A.
Patty's live from Half Moon Bay.
Come in, Half Moon Bay.
Texts in order to survive. Oh, did I just lose you guys?
Yes.
You're back.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So I don't know how much you heard. Other than I'll go back to the fact that students they do not need to become professional language speakers. They need to know the content that is up to 8th grade. Okay. So basically that's survival language. Okay. How to read information like a trained more. I mean, we give them a lot more than what the standards say. So in order to get this award, the language teachers, we've had so much of this already embedded in our curriculum. So we're going to be meeting this week and next week to really create the curriculum that is unified between all of our courses so that students do learn about the world of work and beyond in languages. That's one of the requirements, to be able to apply what they learn to the world of work and beyond. To also talk about aspects of what their achievements are what they were and what they're going to be, present, past, future tense. They already know how to do that. So those are things that we're teaching them that are part of the requirements of this award. And that's what we're going further. And we firmly believe that this is a great way to grow our programs. And I do believe that our Bullis Charters partners, they also have this program as well as the high school. So we want to make this a program that extends to all of our different partners in the community.
Great. Thank you for clarifying. Any other questions? Vladimir? I think you're muted. There you go.
I think I figured it out, but on the about the award, you have Spanish B/E. That's Block and Egan, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. And don't go away by them.
Any other questions?
Well, I mean, I can ask my question now, which is, looking at the biliteracy stuff, it doesn't seem quite fair because we have a lot of students who are actually fluent in 2 languages, right? Because they moved here from somewhere else. And so it doesn't quite seem fair that there's no pathway for them to get the seal of biliteracy. You know, in looking at again, some of the materials like at the county level and the state level, it seems like most of the high school programs have some second prong for demonstrating, you know, literacy in a second language, right? So it's not just those who are enrolled in language classes, it's anybody who has 2 languages. And looking at the state materials, it seems like that's part of the intent of the whole program, is to recognize how important this is. And so, I mean, I understand we only have so much capacity and we don't teach all the languages and we don't have, you know, speakers necessarily who could judge whether a particular student is fluent in, say, Hebrew or Italian or, you know, what have you. But I still would like to see that added to our program somehow, because, you know, otherwise it seems like it's going to be odd that a student who is completely fluent in 2 or even 3 languages can't get this seal, whereas somebody who's just taken 2 years of junior high French can.
May I address that, Sandra?
Sure, Patty.
Okay, so firstly, this is different than the high school program. Oh gosh, am I frozen again?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. My daughter, for example, was in the immersion program, Spanish immersion program here in Halfway High School. When she was in junior high,
Maybe turn off your video, Patty, might help.
Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I think Sandra's right. Try turning off the video and then maybe we'll get all the audio.
So what this is, we acknowledge that, and I believe Sandra to discuss with us the very fact that we have an extremely international community with us. But this is just not, you know, it has to recognize the English capacity of all of these students as well. So it's both English and the language that they're studying. And we totally acknowledge all of these other languages that we have in our community, and that is part of an ongoing conversation that we have. But this is simply one, to get kids to take language at Egan. Number 2, it's to help kids continue with language from 7th to 8th grade. 3, it's also a way for us to differentiate ourselves from other schools. And also, we were talking about that component of advertising our great programs. One more thing to help us advertise. Now, you are absolutely right that other students shouldn't be denied this path. And that requires further conversation as far as how could we guarantee that we can recognize that. That would be a broader program, because in order to do that, you know, we would have to absolutely verify their language ability. And that's something that I'm not sure if we can do, okay, with all the languages that we have out there right now.
So I just want to point out one thing as someone who grew up with another language at home. Just because you can speak another language at home doesn't mean that you know the grammar well enough to be able to articulate the grammar.
That's right.
You could write something in it. I took Spanish 7th through 12th grade, and I learned such detailed Spanish grammar. It actually helped me with my English grammar, to be super honest. But in my native language, I cannot read or write. I can speak it really well, and I don't speak it incorrectly, but I don't know why I am not speaking it incorrectly, if that makes sense, because I don't know the grammar rules. I don't know how to write it. So anyway, so I think that I mean, I do get it that there's a difference between being fluent or what is it, bilingual versus biliterate.
Right.
So
Yes, and I think that's exactly the differentiate. First, we were thinking about having the biliteracy or the bilingual, the focus more on bilingualism, but like this brings up that exact issue. So many of our students are indeed bilingual, but they may not be biliterate. And we want to focus on the biliteracy aspect of what we offer, because that's what we offer at our school, a pathway to biliteracy in French, Spanish, and Mandarin.
thank you. Any other comments?
Charlie, sorry, Jessica. Charlie, did you ask for community comments on this?
I guess I did not. Did I not ask for community comments? Oh gosh. Okay. You guys who jumped into the discussion. Excuse me, and I apologize. And Jessica, hold your comment. We'll do community comments first.
Hopefully where I was going to go anyway, but
Okay. Thank you for the reminder, Vladimir. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. All right. I don't see any hands raised for public comment. And I'm going to close public comment while I look at the list so that someone doesn't raise their hand after I close it. I'm closing public comment. Board members, would you like to provide further comment on this agenda item? Jessica?
yes. I love the idea of this. And I feel that it definitely falls in with our whole equity policy and our commitment to multiculturalism and making sure our students are getting more of a robust curriculum, knowing about everything around us, not just what the white Europeans did for the United States. So I really appreciate that. Along those lines, I think we should start looking at other types of programs like this. For example, in the email I sent to Sandra, I said something like computer science related stuff. Like, I don't think my children are super well into foreign languages. They may like history and stuff like that, but the language they're learning is computer science. They're learning Python, they're learning Java. That is the language they're learning. So maybe if we can find other programs in that department, for those kids, for what they
recognition,
that what they like, and it's recognition for them. And again, along the idea that we have these kids that are recognized for such great computer science skills, and it's another selling point.
Thank you, Jessica. Vladimir, you unmuted.
Yeah. I think it's great. I think biliteracy is wonderful. I, for instance, was never biliterate in French, although I did, and I can't resist boasting, I did get a perfect score by AP, much to my French teacher's dismay. But the one thing I would keep in my back of my mind is turning this into an immersion program, because that's when you really are biliterate, when you can do it equally in this language or that language.
Thank you, Vladimir. Any other comments? Okay. Well, in that case, I think it's a fabulous idea as well, and kudos to you guys for doing this. Can I please have a motion to approve resolution number 20-21-09, Junior High School Pursuit of Biliteracy Award?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. Can I please have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jessica. The motion was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. I will now take a roll call vote. Jessica?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I too vote yes, and motion passes unanimously. So thank you.
Thank you. We will come back next quarter with an update.
Not next month. I'm just
Not next month.
Sandra, you get to make the updates in different languages each time.
Bien sûr.
All right, our next agenda item is the second interim financial report. Mr. Kenyon will present the 2020-21 second interim financial report for review and approval. Mr. Kenyon.
Thanks. And Marcy, I'll try to go through the slides pretty quickly, so have your finger ready to change them. So go ahead with the next slide. So this is just a quick overview reminding you that it's an action item that I'm recommending approval based on the fact that we can meet our financial obligations. And next slide. And kind of highlight where we are now compared to where we were at first interim, which was the most recent real formal update on our finances for the current year. So next slide. Just looking at the general fund, high level overview, where we were when we adopted our budget in June, where we were in December, where we are now. Our reserves have gone down a little bit from the first interim, but they're still up from where we were back in June due to changes on both revenues and expense side of the equation. So next slide. As we look beyond the general fund and look at our special funds, you can see the fund balances of each fund, including the general fund, which was on the prior slide in summary form. The only one that really comment on that's changed much is the deferred maintenance fund that we spent a little more than originally than our roughly $300,000 that we typically budget every year. We had some carryover from the prior year of over a couple $100,000. So we were able to spend a little more this past summer on deferred maintenance projects that finally closed out the invoices and the paying and all the purchase orders more recently than we had information in December. So next slide. Again, focusing on the general fund and just high level, what are the major changes on the revenue side? Revenues overall down since first interim, approximately $250,000. I've identified three major areas. Property tax revenues actually up as our property tax revenue projections for the current year have grown since December. Potentially could grow some more before we close our books in August. Special ed funding is actually down. We have a loss of funding due to not being able to serve students from out of district as we have had in the past, and we get funding for that. Programs where we fill in with kids from out of district, so we're not adding more staff to do it. And because of the pandemic, unable to have kids come and have in-person instruction to do that. They've been served virtually in their home districts. And then we are decreasing our expectations from LAF right now. So we were going from 2.7 million down to 2.4 million in the current year. Next slide. On the expense side, we've got some increased expenses in a variety of areas. The biggest one is applying the 2% across the board salary increase negotiated with our teachers, and our projections include projecting and assuming that holds true for all of our employees, not just our teachers. We've increased some specific costs, some additional liability coverage, and based on that report you heard from Terra Verde on our solar project, and looking at what it cost last year and what our projection was for this year, I'm actually increasing our projected cost by 100,000. That may not materialize, but we'll see. So that's my projection at this point in time. And we have some decreases in the supply and equipment side of things, where we're actually moving expenses sort of out of the general fund to be applied against to some of the COVID funding sources. And we've handled any excesses in a restricted ending balance there for accounting purposes. So next slide. This is just sort of the stair step, how we got from first interim to second interim on some of the major changes that I was just highlighting. Next slide. So I wanted to show you where we are looking forward, not only current year, but looking forward to future years at second interim time. Compared to first interim, we've been talking about, first interim is the brown line at the top. Second interim is the sort of, I don't know, grayish colored or green-gray colored at the bottom. But I also gave you a projection when I gave you a preliminary budget update, I think in February 8th. So that, I just wanted to reference both points in time, not only the December first interim, but also the most recent time I gave you a projection, which was as preliminary budget on February 8th, and where we are now. At first interim, we did not have any cost of living across the board raises included. We did have that at the preliminary budget time. One of the big changes since February 8th is decreasing the revenue expectation for the foundation, among other things. So next slide. So I've got two key points I want to make, and one of them is on this slide tonight. So in order to facilitate the in-person instruction, the hybrid program that we have and have grown during the year, we've spent quite a bit of money developing our health and safety protocols, spending money on the PPE, the personal protective equipment, and all the staffing and whatnot we've needed to ensure a safe environment for our students and staff to return to in-person. So we are now spent more than we're getting in funding to date by a little over $1 million. Okay. I want you to know though that there are some funding. There's funding on the horizon, and now it's real. When I did the slides, it was still, the state funding was not quite finalized, but it has been finalized as of last week. But we have about $300,000 coming in federal funding. That is already going to be apportioned to us. That's already been determined. And then at the state level, the governor's proposals went through the legislative process under two bills, SB 86 and AB 86, that got approved and passed by, and approved by the governor, got passed and approved by the governor. And preliminary estimates indicate about $3.5 million total available for us. And all those funds can be used retroactively, applied against some of that overage that we've spent money on so far on the programs. Next slide, Marcy. So as we move from looking at the current year and what it looks like, how it compares to prior projections, let's look at the multi-year projection a little closer. So you can sort of work your way through this. So we have a 3-year forecast, and then Marcy, keep clicking. And then we have a longer, the 3-year forecast is what's required by the state. And then we have a 6-year forecast. So let's go to the next slide. So this is what I'm calling the baseline, which is what you saw on the previous slide when we were comparing the reserve levels to first interim and to the preliminary budget. And the next slide, and just go back a sec. Well, you don't need to go back, but just note that we have 2% salary increases in the current year and next year for employees, and as baked into the projections, but not past next year. So no salary increases starting in 22, 23 as far as across the board salary increases. Next slide, Marcy. So the multi-year projection is always dependent on the assumptions we use. So this slide is going to be about the assumptions just for next year, and then we'll look a little bit beyond. So keep clicking as I talk. Projecting property tax growth rate of 3% next year. We'll talk more about that. An increase, I've already shared this information in prior meetings in terms of what we project enrollment for us in BCS next year. I've already talked about the 2% across the rate board raises. Health insurance costs expected to go up 7.5%. And I think we're going Now we're going beyond next year and looking at the 6-year forecast. So I've talked about 3% growth next year, and then 2% is the assumption for the following year and 4% thereafter. That's similar to what I posited in the preliminary budget multi-year projection forecast I shared with you on February 8th. We're looking at some slow increase in enrollment over the 6-year period, needing to add 8 additional teachers. I don't have any information to inform a enrollment projection for BCS beyond what is projected for next year. So that is projected to be flat at this time. As indicated previously, no across the board raise after next year in the baseline forecast. Health benefit rates increase at 7.5% per year. And our CACF will be vetting all of these assumptions as it works towards its annual report as well. Next slide, Marcy. So the other point beside where we are with COVID expenses and potential new revenues to deal with learning loss and other issues as we look ahead, tax growth scenario. As I noted, the current projection is 3% growth next year, 2% the following year, and 4% every year thereafter. But when we start working on our budget, I'm expecting to change those assumptions because of the AV growth we have so far, looking towards next year's assessed value, the way the economy is moving, and we're seeing pretty good strength in the housing market. Maybe not as much volume, but certainly very high prices because the supply is low right now. So I am planning to use a 4% growth scenario for every year starting next year as I'm looking at the multi-year projection. So what does that look like? Next slide. Well, before we look at what that looks like, this is why this is showing you where we stand right now in the assessed value of our property for next year, which is finalized on July 1st. So we have all of March, April, May, and June left before that AV is finalized. And as you can see from past years, even during the recession years, we do get growth in our AV as we're going forward. And I don't see anything on the horizon in our local economy to indicate we're not going to have some additional growth. We're already just below 4% growth for next year. Next slide. So what happens to our curve of our reserves? If we have that 4% growth assumption annually, you can see the curve turns upward. And then I think the next slide shows what happens to that curve if we apply a 2% annual salary increase to all employees for every year. It does go down again. Again, we have, I think, a conservative projection for out years of 4% annually, which is well below our historical average for any period. Any 5 to 10 year period is around 6 or 7%. Next slide. As I've been saying all year, there are a lot of uncertainties as we look forward, and I've identified some of these uncertainties. We've talked about them before. I don't think I'm going to spend much time on this. So next slide. In conclusion, I'm going to recommend that you approve the second interim as presented and ask the question if you want to provide any input to our budget review committee that starts meeting this week, actually. What direction you might want to give that committee as we look towards the budget for next year. And I think the final slides are just kind of what I show every year as to where we are on the timeline, looking ahead to the May revise and to the adoption of a budget in June. The next slide, Marcy. We have as an appendix the actual spreadsheet model here. Next slide, Marcy. So if you wanted to ask any more detailed questions, we can reference that. And you, of course, have the state required report that needs to be, as part of your packet, that needs to be submitted to the county once you make approval or take action on this item tonight. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Shali, for questions, public comment, and board comment.
Thank you, Randy. Board members, do you have any clarifying questions for Randy on his presentation? Okay, then I will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Let's just see. Okay, I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I'm going to close public comment. Board members, would any of you like to provide comment on this agenda item? Jessica.
I'm going to answer the question of what direction does a board, or what do I wish to be provided to the Budget Review Committee? Along the lines of our discussion as it related to reopening, we need to know the costs of for reopening, whether the safety costs, also if we wanted a more robust summer school, what does that require? And so like any of the costs related to safety for the staff, mental health, facilities, etc. I think we need to game out how much that's going to cost, and whether we're getting enough federal funding, state funding, etc. For that. Other than that, I am all for approving the second interim, but those are that's my direction for the Budget Review Committee.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, and I don't have any further comments.
Shali, sorry.
Yeah.
Randy, you did not, correct me if I'm wrong, but your projection so far did not include any monies from the hopefully soon to be passed $1.9 trillion pandemic relief. Is that correct?
That's correct. So that's still out on the horizon.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that's all I want to say.
Okay. Can I please have a motion to approve the second interim financial report?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. May I please have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jessica. Motion to approve the second interim financial report was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. Let's do a roll call vote. Vladimir.
Yes.
Ryan.
Yes.
Jessica.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Randy.
My space bar wasn't working. The cheat, that's why.
Someone else had a space bar issue tonight. I don't know. So I need to tell you, please be sure your microphone is on before you start. Sorry. Okay, next agenda item. Disclosure of proposed collective bargaining agreement with SEA. Staff will present the financial impact of the proposed collective bargaining agreement with the California School Employees Association, Chapter 103. Mr. Kenyon.
Thank you. As we did with our teachers, as required by state law, we need to disclose to you and the public, the financial implications of a tentative bargaining agreement, collective bargaining agreement we have with our employee groups. We've done the teachers previously. We're now looking at our classified employee group. This tentative agreement includes a 2% raise for the current year, similar to what we negotiated with our teachers. You see the cost implications in this disclosure. This is not an action item. This is just a discussion item or a disclosure tonight. We will bring it back at the next board meeting 2 weeks from now for your approval. As you heard from Elena Shea earlier, the membership of the Classified Association has approved their tentative agreement, and looking forward to the board's approval at the next board meeting. I've already had it reviewed with the county. I don't know if they have a letter attached to the agenda. I don't remember if that was included or not, but county has reviewed it as well, and they're prepared to give their blessing to this disclosure and to our agreement. So here to answer any questions you might have. And other than that, that's about all I have to say, Shelley.
Your space bar, Shelley.
I should have told myself prior to making a comment, I need to make sure my microphone is on. Sorry. Thanks, Randy. Any questions for Randy? No, I don't have any further questions. Any questions. I will take public comment. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raised hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Let's see. Okay, I do not see any raised hands. Oh, thank you. Megan?
Hi, thanks so much. I just had one quick question. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, yeah. I heard in this section mention about, robust summer school, and then talking about it a little bit earlier. And I was just wondering, and it was said that the summer school is going to be in person. And I was just wondering if for those families that have chose distant learning the whole time because of maybe medical complications in the family or whatever choices, that if part of your summer school is going to have an option for a distant learning at home or with a teacher over Zoom component. So, and that's it.
Great. Thank you, Megan. All righty. Well, okay, I still don't see any other hands. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment. Board members, any final questions for Randy? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Randy.
Yeah, Shelley, you may want to indicate that you're not able to answer all the questions at the moment, right?
Oh, yes. We are not able to, the board is not permitted to answer questions during public comment. Is that good?
Yep. You want me to move on to the next item?
Yes, please. Salary agreements for non-represented employees.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Shelley, if I can just make a suggestion. Megan, if you would email your question to Jeff, Sandra, and/or the Board of Trustees, we will get you an answer. But we've already finished that agenda item, so we have to move on. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, next agenda item. Salary agreements for non-represented employees. Randy?
Yes. So we have beyond the two groups that are represented by a bargaining association, the teachers and the classified employees. We have a number of employees that aren't represented by any particular group, and we are bringing forward tonight our recommendation that we provide the same salary increase for these folks that we have negotiated with our teachers, which includes a 2% salary increase for the current year, and then a 2% increase on top of that on the salary schedule for next year. So it's essentially a 2-year settlement, if you will, even though we don't have to go through the collective bargaining process with these employees. So we've attached all the salary schedules for these groups. There's a number of them. So you will see the current salary schedule, the current year with the 2%, and then next year's with the 2% on top of the 2% this year, right? So it's for your action tonight, and I'm turning it back to you for board discussion and and action.
Great, thank you, Randy. Any questions for Randy before we take public comment? Nope. Okay. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Okay. I don't see any hands going up for public comment, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comment at this time. Board members, would any of you like to provide further comment on this agenda item? Jessica?
I just want to say that I'm glad that we can now offer the rest of our staff this extra compensation, that we have the financial position to do this, because it is well deserved for all the hard work they've been putting in this last year and going forward.
Definitely. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, well then, I would like a motion to approve the salary agreements for non-represented employees.
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. Can I please have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Jessica. Motion to approve the salary agreements for non-represented employees was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. Any further board discussion? Okay. Do a roll call vote. I think I did that out of order, but okay. Jessica?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. That's wonderful that we can do that. Okay, on to our next agenda item. Transfer of development rights purchase and sale agreement, Merlone Geyer. The Board of Trustees will consider approving the agreement for the transfer of 150,000 square feet of development rights to Merlone Geyer for a total purchase price of $19,500,000. Mr. Kenyon.
Yes, this is an action item. Thank you, Shali. And these are what Merlone Geyer is proposed and is agreed to purchase one of the biggest chunks of development rights of all the various developers we have letters of intent from. And this would raise, as you indicated, just under $20 million for the district to help pay for the 10th site. So I am recommending that you approve this. We've attached the key deal terms. We've been working for a number of months, probably longer than months, into a year or so, with all of the different developers that are in various stages of getting their projects in front of the city of Mountain View and approved. As you know, Sobrato was our first one to actually come through and get approval by both Sobrato and the board. The TDR agreement was approved by them, I think, a couple months ago. This is our second developer to have an agreement that we can move forward with. So it's here for you for action tonight. They've already signed the agreement. Again, you can see the key deal terms as part of the backup for tonight. And we've worked hard. Our attorneys have worked hard in negotiating this agreement with them. So I'm going to turn it back to you for any discussion or questions, Shali.
Thanks, Randy. Board members, any clarifying questions for Randy before I take public comment? Okay, seeing none. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raised hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. And I'll just give it a few seconds to see if anybody raises their hands. Okay. I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I'm going to close public comment. Board members, would any of you like to provide comment on this agenda item? Okay, great. In that case, may I have a motion to approve?
So
the
moved.
Oh.
Go
Can I
ahead.
have,
Go ahead.
the motion was to approve my birthday fund. Just kidding. Can I have a second?
Oh,
You, Jessica.
Shelley, I do think you need to read it out.
You want me to say the motion? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to start all over again. Can I have a motion to approve the transfer of development rights purchase and sale agreement with Merlone Geyer?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. May I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Jessica. Any further board discussion? Okay, seeing none. Motion to approve the transfer of development rights purchase and sale agreement with Merlone Geyer was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. We'll now do a roll call vote. Jessica?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Exciting. Okay, our next agenda item, the 2021-22 board meeting calendar. The Board of Trustees will review and consider approving the 2021-22 board meeting calendar. Mr. Bear.
Yes, hello again. Attached is the board meeting calendar for the 21-22 school year. This comes in cadence after the board approves the district calendar, then the board meeting calendar follows thereafter. And this calendar is similar in meeting layout as calendars have been in the past few years. I will note the one difference is the month of May has 5 Mondays in 2022. So we do have the ability to have a second and fourth Monday meeting, and then Memorial Day is on the 31st, the 5th Monday. So normally we have 3 meetings in a row, as you recall, in May and then June and June. This one allows us to have that spacing. So we will take advantage of that. So that's really the only difference on the board meeting calendar. It is an action item presented for your consideration of approval. Shelley?
Thank you, Jeff. Do any board members have questions for Jeff before? Oh, Steve.
Quick one. It reflects the change we're about to make to the school calendar on the next agenda item, which we had was shifted to is it President's Day, the 27th, or Washington's birthday? Something's changing.
You're muted, Jeff.
Thanks. Was that approved during consent?
Yeah, that was approved during consent, and that's just the Tuesday we get off.
Right. So it does
anyway.
recognize that it doesn't conflict with that.
Great. I'm going to open this up for public comment. We will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes.
Our first speaker is Ria Shah.
Hi, thank you. I'm commenting because I'm a parent of a LASD child and a MVLA high school student. And this year, as I've tried to join board calls for both districts, they all fall on Mondays. And so typically it's me on one board call and my spouse on the other, or we try to make both. So I wondered if there's any consideration for parents who do straddle multiple districts to have board meetings on different or alternating Mondays. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. So as I mentioned before, we do not comment back to when public comments are made. So if you want, you can certainly email us. Email Jeff, email the trustees. Okay.
And Ms. Shaw, I'll be happy to answer that. You can just drop me an email. Thanks.
Okay, and it looks like we don't have any other hands raised for public comment, so I'm going to close public comment. Okay, board members, would any of you like to provide comment on this agenda item? Brian.
So it's somewhere on this, and I was going to comment on this during the free-form period later, but I'll tack it onto this one. Looking at the bottom here where it says board meetings are held at the district office, we're all hoping by next year. But I actually would like us to talk at a future meeting about our board meetings going forward and under what circumstances we might shift out of Zoom, or whether, actually, I would love us to do a survey of parents and other maybe community members to see what they've liked about this Zoom format, what they prefer about in person, what, if any, ideas they have about how we should do this moving forward. Because I think it kind of should be on our horizon as vaccines become distributed, and we should sort of talk about whether we're gonna, how long we're gonna stay in this format, how we're gonna shift, what the pros and cons are.
Yeah, Brian, we're finalizing a survey to go out to parents. So I see Sarah on the line, so we can, or in the audience, I should say. So we can ask some questions around this topic as well. It's a good idea.
Thank you, Brian.
And I will say that as a high school parent myself, if we can deconflict, that's always better. But I know there are lots of other meetings. There's the city council. It's sort of very difficult to stray from your assigned slot once your slot has been assigned and everybody else has kind of worked around it. So.
Well, I will point out, now that you've raised that point, Brian, we did move to this cadence because there was heavy demand or request from the community that we alternate with the Bullish Charter School meetings that are also held on Mondays. Theirs are on the first and third Mondays. So.
And they then followed us over. So yeah, if we're gonna accommodate somebody, I'm not sure who I would pick.
Any other comments on this agenda item? Okay, can I please have a motion to approve the 2021-22 board meeting calendar?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. May I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Jessica. Any further board discussion? Okay, seeing none. Motion to approve the 2021-22 board meeting calendar was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. Now we'll do a roll call vote. Jessica?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I too vote yes, and motion passes unanimously. Thanks, everyone. And our final agenda item, resolution number 20/21-10, Joint Powers Authority Membership, School Project for Utility Rate Reduction, or SPUR. The Board of Trustees will consider approving resolution number 20/21-10, authorizing the district to participate as a member district of the Joint Powers Authority School Project for Utility Rate Reduction in order to take advantage of certain discounts on technology equipment and infrastructure. Mr. Kenyon.
Yes, thank you, Shali. SPUR, I will shorten it, has been around for a number of years. Heretofore, I haven't seen a great deal of advantage for us to participate. However, this year we may have an opportunity to get some discounts on technology equipment and or technology infrastructure purchases. So I am asking the board to approve us as joining as a member of that large JPA of many school districts in the Bay Area and maybe even beyond the Bay Area in California. There is no obligation on our part. There are no membership fees. As programs or opportunities come up, such as the technology purchase opportunity, we can join them as we see fit. So again, there is no real obligation on our part except to take advantage when it makes sense for us. So I'm putting that in front of you for action tonight and turn it back to you, Shelley.
Thanks, Randy. Do we have any questions for Randy? Okay. I will now take public comment on this agenda item. To comment on this agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. Yeah, I'm just gonna wait a few seconds. Okay, I don't see any hands raised for public comment, so I'm gonna close public comment. Board members, would any of you like to provide comment on this agenda item? Okay, then can I please have a motion to approve resolution number 20/21-10, Joint Powers Authority Membership, School Project for Utility Rate Reduction?
So moved.
Thank you, Vladimir. Can I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Jessica. Is there any further board discussion? Okay.
This is Groupon for schools, right? For districts.
Okay. Motion to approve resolution number 20/21-10, Joint Powers Authority Membership, School Project for Utility Rate Reduction, was made by Vladimir and seconded by Jessica. We'll now do a roll call vote. Jessica?
Yes.
Vladimir?
Yes.
Ryan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
I too vote yes. Motion passes unanimously. Great. Thank you, everyone. On to board and administration comments. Sandra, would you like to start us off?
Sure. We have a curriculum council meeting Wednesday afternoon at 3:30. I was thrilled to be over at Egan this morning as they were welcoming their 7th graders and walking around campus to see. It's hard to really think about that our students in March, it's really the first time that they're coming to school on their new campus at junior high school. So that was very exciting today. And then we have a planning meeting for summer school. So I know that we have a lot of questions and still developing program and still trying to understand need of students and staffing and all of that. So we're working hard to get that up and running as soon as we can, because we know parents want to be informed and invited and be able to make that decision sooner rather than later. So that's it for me.
Thank you. Randy?
Yeah, just 2 quick things. We have a quarterly Citizens Oversight, Bond Oversight Committee meeting this month. I think it's the 17th before our next board meeting. And then we have quarterly BCS meetings, Bullish Charter School meetings for implementation issues. Our meeting is scheduled for this week, but we've postponed it 2 or 3 weeks because we're kind of busy with the junior highs opening this week. So we both agreed that we would postpone this a couple weeks, just for your information. I'm letting you know. That's it.
Thank you, Randy. Jeff?
Yeah, as Sandra said, great day today with junior high schools reopening. I invite you to, we actually have 3 more dates where students are going to be coming onto the campuses for the first times at the junior high schools. So this Thursday, next Monday, and next Thursday. I encourage you to go to one of the junior high schools if you can on any or all of those dates, just to welcome students back, welcome staff back. Students arrive right around 8:30, sometimes a little before then. So if you get there by 8:10 or so, then you should be in good shape. But just check in with the principal, let Keith or Bob know you're there, and they'll be happy to have you join, or maybe even put you to work. But it is exciting seeing kids come back to campus. So come by if you can. That's it.
Thank you, Jeff. Jessica?
I can't remember what I've done beyond today, but today I did go to Block and got to welcome the 7th graders, and it was a great experience. Parents were happy, kids were smiling. They were posing for socially distanced pictures. It was beautiful. I even took a picture of socially distanced bikes before I left. They were 6 feet apart. They know how to follow the protocols, and it was great to see everything in practice with the junior high.
Thank you, Jessica. Vladimir?
Yes, I think it's this Thursday at 3:30. We have a budget review committee where we correct Randy's mistakes. But other than that, nothing much.
Thank you. Brian?
Yep. So PTA leadership meeting coming up on Thursday morning. And then there's actually City of Los Altos is having a complete streets study session next Thursday, the 18th, which I encourage everybody to attend if they can. But there's also a website, losaltoscompletestreets.org. .com, losaltoscompletestreets.com, where they're taking public input. They actually have a interactive map that you can sort of see what comments other people have made about various streets and add your own comments and point out obstacles and good routes and roadblocks and all the rest of it. So I encourage everybody to go add to that and make sure that you give your feedback, because they're about halfway through this whole cycle of updating the bicycle and pedestrian plan. So now is the time to get your wish list on there.
Thanks, Brian. Steve? Thank you. I had a track board meeting last week. I had the LASD Equity Task Force meeting earlier today. And this Thursday is Challenge Team. So if anyone's interested. And that's it for me. And I'd like to adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Have a good night.